First, the ANU School of Music has had its budget cut, its courses curtailed and its staff sacked, or more politely, made redundant. Only last week we learned that the jazz program is over. The protests have echoed around the music world. The former head of the school was one of those who departed. So who on earth would want that job and why? To answer those questions, I met with Peter Tregear.
Well, I think, first of all, this is a school worth saving. I think the Canberra community deserves a great music school, and so does ANU. And I guess the second thing really is that, yes, clearly the school's going through a difficult period of transition, but the problems that the school faces are not unique ultimately to Canberra. They're problems that are faced, I think, by every school of music in the country. So in a way, when the job was offered, I had to say, well, is this a problem that I should face or shouldn't? And I basically thought, yes, it is. In other words, it's something that I really felt that I had to face in terms of my own career development, that I was going to face in one place or another. And really, thinking of it positively, I couldn't think of a better place. The Canberra School of Music, for anyone of my generation particularly, was the great place for people to study music in the late 80s, early 90s. So, I come to here with a great sense of responsibility, in a sense, to preserve the school's reputation into the future.
You've had a long career as a writer, a performer, a conductor, a researcher. How do you describe your relationship with music?
Oh, it's it's the great love affair of my life. It's as simple as that. And I often say to myself, amongst other people, that in many ways it'd be easier if it weren't. I could move on. I could take another career. I can't. It's simply something that's part of what, as it were, fires my soul. Simple as that. In other words, I think a life without music is somehow a life diminished.
Well, there's no doubt this place has taken a real pounding in terms of staff and student morale. Its reputation has suffered, and of course there are the financial issues. Where do you begin to turn things around?
There's going to be continuing uncertainty for a little while. I think what we do is that my job, I think, is to renew the sort of contract of trust, both with the staff and with the wider community. I should say, though, that you're right. Of course, it's been a very difficult period. I should say that, having walked into the school, that it's certainly not universal that people are feeling, as it were, negative about the school. I think those that have come with the journey are certainly aware that, in fact, this is also a land of opportunity.
When you look at the school as it is now, do you say this place has great potential, or do you recognise this is in trouble and needs saving?
Oh, look, it's a bit of both. I think it would be disingenuous for me to say here that the school is going through a difficult period. But it would also be disingenuous for me to say that is not also bound up with actually a core of optimism. I think. Also, my job too is to recognise the school has a distinguished history, and certainly that I need to, in what I do and what I express on behalf of the school and on behalf of the staff, is to acknowledge that and find a way in which that people, certainly the outside in the larger Canberra community, can feel, as it were, engaged with both that history and the future of the school.
Do you think the shake-up has been handled badly from a university perspective?
Look, in one sense, it's very difficult for me to comment on that. I've come from outside. I think, in a way, also, I suspect, I certainly don't want to sort of dodge that question, but I really think that my job now is to sort of concentrate on the future. I think, one steps outside of that, I would be amazed if there weren't mistakes. That I think is the nature of these things. I think that I can certainly assure you that there are some pretty strong ideals that are driving this period of change. But like all processes of whether that's in politics or administration and so on, these are never completely smooth. There's never things that we would go back and say, yeah, we'd do exactly the same thing if we had our time again.
You're obviously a deep thinker about music, but are you just as passionate about those management, nitty-gritty, nuts and bolts details that will be the real strengths that you'll need to turn this place around?
Yes, because, and I guess it gets back to what I'm saying earlier, that really you can't really have one without the other. I think this has been, in terms of my own personal growth and my own career, that's something I've had to recognise, that it's not enough to have, as it were, a great dream about, say, music education without having grounded in the messy world of administration, of budget management and so on. Actually, it's also very intellectually challenging and personally very challenging, and in the good sense of that way. I mean, this is part of the, if you like, I mean, it may sound perverse, but it's part of the attraction of the job for me, is, as I said, going back to what I said at the very beginning, is to face that challenge directly. For me, is also actually what I find interesting about the position.
Have you been surprised by the level of vitriol and commentary this issue has generated here in Canberra?
Of course. And first of all, that's because of the nature of the discipline. This is something that people do feel very powerfully and profoundly. I think I would have been worried if it hadn't been. As I say, would I agree with all the commentary? Not necessarily, but I am the first to say that I actually find it terrific that the Canberra community is so powerfully and passionately engaged with the future of this school. And certainly my job is, when if some of that commentary remains negative, my job is to engage with those voices and basically say, look, I think we can now work together and to reconfirm this school as one of the great schools in the country.
Can it be one of those great schools in the country?
Oh, absolutely.
Has it slipped from being one of those places 10 years ago, perhaps?
I think this is a problem again faced by all schools. I mean, part of me, coming back from a long period overseas, I would say there's not a school in the country that probably feels it's in a stronger position now than it was 10 years ago. I would hesitate to make a relative judgment on that because, frankly, I don't have enough direct experience of the other schools in the country. But I do think, if you like, the general morale of schools of music in Australia is low. I think that's. I don't think I'd be saying anything controversial in saying that. So I think, to look at it another way, the crown jewel of being the best school in the country is there to be taken.